So welcome. Thank you for coming. It looks like we have somebody else in the waiting room. I'm going to go ahead and let him in. My name's Tiffany Scroggs. I work for the Washington Apex Accelerator, and I'll be facilitating today's 1 hour training on preparing to bid or rebid, in some cases, the Audiovisual Solutions statewide contract with the state of Washington. This is a unique situation. I don't know if any of you were on our preparing to bid the original solicitation several months ago. If so, welcome back. And if you're new to this series, welcome in as well. The whole point of this is to help orient you to a real life solicitation on the street right now with the state of Washington for AV solutions. And we'll walk through kind of how to tackle this if you're interested in bidding, how to make a bid, no bid decision, first of all, and then help answer any questions that you have. So welcome. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, you're welcome to do that. It helps kind of everybody know who's in the room. And make sure that everyone's comfortable with what's going on here. We are recording. I'll toss this on YouTube later today, and for those who couldn't make it here today. So just be aware of that. And I got one more in the waiting room. Come on in, Miguel. Okay, so I'll talk just briefly about who we are and why we're doing this, and then we'll dive really into the solicitation history. We'll review the opportunity. There's two documents that are in your email. If you pre-registered for this session about 10 minutes ago, I sent an email to everybody that was registered with a copy of the solicitation that was found on Webs as of today, the pre-bid checklist, and a bid, no bid decision matrix. These are your documents. You can customize them to meet your needs. And we'll talk a little bit about the best way to tackle that in a second. So first off, Apex Accelerator, we're a private not-for-profit. We do not work for the state government. We are funded in part by Department of Enterprise Services to help provide this training here today. We also are funded by the U.S. Department of Defense and supported locally by a number of economic development organizations. And that's why we're able to provide no-cost advising services and training services to Washington-based businesses. Our whole goal is to help you succeed in public sector contracting. This is our team across the state. They're dynamite folks who meet one-on-one with businesses. I'm the program director, so I'm normally the budget lady, but I also help do some trainings from time to time. So that's why you're stuck with me here today. So a little bit more about who we are in, relation to who the state government is. So the state government have official procurement professionals or contracting officers on the payroll, and they are the only ones authorized to spend taxpayer dollars. And that's important because once they're in a position of spending taxpayer dollars, there's a lot of rules for them that they have to follow related to transparency, related to what they can say and can't say, and related to all the other things. And so they can't help you bid, for one. They can't be perceived as helping you bid. They have to be fair and impartial. And so Apex, on the other hand, that's where I work. We're a nonprofit, and we're authorized to only provide procurement technical assistance. So I can't obligate the dollars from the government. I can only help advise. We advise, we counsel, we educate, and you can take that or leave that information as you see fit. What a lot of times we spend time doing is meeting with businesses to review your bid proposals and suggest improvements. And really what we're looking there is not your technical capabilities, especially related to AV. I know very little about AV. We're looking at it through the lens of the government to make sure you're responsive to what the government's asking from you, with the idea that you'll have a better proposal at the end of the day. There is a pre-bid conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. I highly recommend you attend this. This is where you can meet the buyer. You can meet Department of Enterprise Services and potential partners if you're not thinking of priming it, or your potential competitors. You can hear which parts of the solicitation they really emphasize. Hopefully they cover the changes from the previous attempt at bidding this out to the current attempt. And they usually use plain language, whereas the contract is written in legalese. The DES pre-bids are never recorded. So if you want the information out of the pre-bid session, you have to show up and ask questions there. You can also send written questions. And sometimes when you show up to a pre-bid meeting, you ask a question, they're like, do you mind typing that into the chat, or do you mind sending an email to the email address and asking it formally that way? keep in mind all the questions you ask, either verbally or especially in writing, will be turned into an amendment to the solicitation file and published for everybody to see. So your competitors will see your question and then the state's answer to that. So tomorrow at 9 a.m., hope you can make it. So as I mentioned before, this solicitation made it to the apparent successful bidder stage. And if you were one of the apparent successful bidders, I am sorry. That's a sad place to be because you think you won, you pop the champagne and you're like, we're in. And then something happens in that protest window. And I don't know that this was officially protested, but somehow during the apparent successful bidder announcement period, which is 5 days, after they announced that, they met with somebody that bid it and they reviewed the Exhibit B requirements and scoring and found a serious error. And I don't know the details beyond that. But as a result of that error, they're choosing to rebid the entire solicitation. So that's a big bummer. That's like the last thing anyone wants to see, unless you were a competitor that didn't win. Now you get a second chance, or maybe you didn't even hear about this opportunity, so you missed the boat altogether. You're back in it now. They cleaned the slate and they're starting over. Did anyone have any questions or comments about where we're at now? Okay. One big change I noticed from the original solicitation to the one that's on the street right now is that the current solicitation doesn't have any points for non-cost factors. That means your price is the most favored price. Like you have to have the low price, low bid. In the old solicitation, there were some extra points for non-cost factors, and I don't remember the specifics of that, but typically it's around your experience level or your customer service assurances or something else that makes you somewhat unique other than price. Now it's all price. And the Exhibit B that you still have to submit is turned into like a pass-fail scenario. This is the bid tab, and I'm happy to send this to anyone that wants it. It's an Excel file with a whole bunch of tabs. It's who bid the original solicitation. So I'm happy to share it with you. It's public information. The apparent successful bidders definitely have it. They were given it to them either at the notification or during their debrief conference after they were notified. So anyway, it shows the cost factors in the second tab, second column, and then the non-cost factors in the third column. So you can kind of see if they were to just toss out the non-cost factors, who would be the apparent successful bidder if that was the only thing, which is the new reality going forward. So I'm going to skip past this, and maybe at the end I can multitask and pop it into the chat so everyone can see the actual Excel file. So let's talk a little bit about AV, Washington State, and I guess state procurement in general. So Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, they are kind of the centralized team that buys things on behalf of all agencies. They put together what they call statewide contracts. They used to be called master contracts. They have over 1,700 vendors now and over $2 billion in annual spend. These numbers are outdated. So significant spending, and it's usually commonly purchased goods and services that you find on these statewide contracts. Think office supplies or something that you would think state agencies need. Once there's a contract created, the state agencies are required to use it. And then local governments, like maybe the city of Redmond or Pierce County, they can use it if they want to. So it just depends on their procurement policies and whether or not they want to do it. The AV Solutions is something that's been around for a while. You'll get these slides right after today's training. You can click right there onto the current contract that I think is actually expired now. So it says current contract, but the current old contract with the 4 vendors that were on it for a number of years. It's time to rebid it. And you can see the current vendors that are on there. You can see their pricing for the last time that they submitted pricing. So you can kind of get a sense of what's going on and what the state is used to paying for AV solutions. This is what that contract page looks like when you get the link and you head over there. And then if you scroll down, there's like this tab in the section, and this is where the most important fun parts are. You can look at the current documents and pull down the pricing that way. In terms of utilization of this statewide contract, like I said, state agencies are mandated to use it, and local governments can if they want. This is for 5 years, and it looks like agencies spent about $40 million on this contract. There was like the COVID low, and then it peaked up after COVID. These are the four vendors that were on the original contract that expired last March, and how the spend shook out. These are the top agencies that used the current contract. So interesting enough, the top government was the state of Oregon. So I don't think that they are listed as a cooperative member to this contract in the new go around. For a while, Oregon really liked what Washington was doing and just kind of hopped on board. But for whatever reason, they're trying to do their own contracts now. But you still had significant Department of Health. That makes sense given COVID. LNI, King County, and then higher education's all the way down the line. So you can see state agencies made up about a third of the spend. So when you're thinking forward, like, okay, if I win this, what's my marketing strategy going to be? You can kind of use this as a benchmark. Like, okay, state agencies are required to use it, but they're only making up a third of the spend. That means there's a lot of opportunity with higher ed, counties and cities and that kind of thing. So what's going to happen after award? You bid it, you're the apparent successful bidder, you get through the protest period, right? Nobody protests, it's all clean, and then you get your signed award. You'll be listed as an awardee on that contract page. And then you'll kind of do your marketing strategy. I want to say sit and wait, but essentially now you wait for those orders to come in. We have a recommendation that you meet with one of our advisors and come up with a robust marketing strategy to make sure that the agencies know that you're on the contract, it's easy to buy from you, and that you're the best one listed. Keep in mind, there's no guarantee you'll get any work. The four vendors that were on there did have work, which is good to see. Typically, when I pull a list of statewide contracts, there's usually one or two vendors that don't have any work. They have still reported quarterly that they're not getting any work to the state agency. They're still maintaining their insurance and all of that. And so it's kind of sad once you're on contract, there's no guarantee you'll get any work. So you have to promote your firm as being an option. So this is what the current opportunity looks like on WEBS. You have to have a login and password and a registration in WEBS to see this information, but it is quick and fairly easy to do. It's free. Keep in mind that this is a requirement. WEBS is the only authoritative source. So you have to get a WEBS login so you can see amendments and kind of be in the know for this opportunity. You want to make sure that your commodity codes inside your registration match that of the solicitation. It doesn't have to be 100% matchy match, but the key ones should be on your profile. And a good indicator of whether or not that's happening is if you got email notifications about this solicitation. So that's a good indicator that your email is correct and your commodity codes match. If I scroll down on the current opportunity, you can see the vendors that have downloaded it. This was this morning. Quite a few firms have downloaded it. And you want to keep in mind there is a competitive advantage for small businesses and veteran businesses. And so that's why the status is there on the right-hand side. You can see who's considered a small business. You also want to check your profile within WEBS to make sure that you're appropriately listed as a small business or a veteran business. This is a copy of my profile that I made back in 2011, kind of shows you how long I've been around. And it has our Washington Small Business designation there listed. I'm not a veteran-owned business, so that's not on there, but if it was, you could see that too. So if I scroll all the way down in WEBS, you get to the very fun part at the bottom, which has the copy of the solicitation. So this is the competitive solicitation. It has all of the exhibits, A, B, C, D, E, and then it will have the amendments. Guarantee you there will be amendments. It might just be a copy of the slide deck for tomorrow's pre-bid. It might be the Q&A, or it might be a really critical amendment that changes some core thing within the solicitation. So you want to watch for your amendments. So let's kind of pause and zoom out a little bit before we get to the next section here. But essentially, how it's going to work is you're going to read and download the solicitation documents. You're going to decide whether or not you bid, and I have a tool for you to use. You're going to organize your approach, and you're going to assemble your bid and submit on time. So in your email from about 20 minutes ago is a pre-proposal checklist. And I always use this if I'm going after a new funding source or I'm working with a client that's looking at a solicitation for the first time, is to pull up the solicitation and the checklist at the same time and kind of go through kind of like a scavenger hunt, make it fun, because it doesn't read like a interesting fiction novel. It's really written by attorneys and it's very legalese, and you can get lost in kind of the important information. You guys are all technical in nature, so maybe it's not that big of a deal, but we do highly recommend that you pull out the important information that will help you decide, do I want to bid this and can I bid this? So if anyone has multiple screens going, actually, I can picture all of you have like the triple screens given your professions. But does anyone know, want to help me fill this out? We'll just kind of walk through how this sheet works. So if I'm bidding this, I'm going to pull up the solicitation with the number on it, and I'm going to type it into my pre-proposal checklist. So does anyone want to tell me what the solicitation number is?
0224.
Hey, gold star. Thanks. The deadline to submit.
January 12th.
Yes, at midnight or 11:59 to be technical. If you miss this deadline, you are not able to bid. Done. Over. No, no go. It doesn't matter if you're out of power or your house is underwater. It's a deadline and it's got to be hit. And we found this information on page 8. There is a pre-proposal conference tomorrow. I want to put that on my checklist to make sure I'll put it on my calendar. That also is found on page 8 with the link. There's no registration. It's just the Teams link where you join. Site visit date. Now, why would I have that on this checklist? Well, this checklist is generic. It's used for all of my clients with the idea that you customize it to your business. I would imagine that in a lot of your world, you will have a site visit. You'll go and you'll look at the wiring or whatever, and make sure that you fully understand before you submit a bid. This one doesn't have a site visit, so you might want to leave that on there for future solicitations. But the Q&A period, that cutoff date is Christmas Eve at midnight. The solicitation was issued December 9th. And are there reserved awards? Yes. This is important to hone into now when you're deciding whether or not you want to bid, is how competitive you think you might be. There is reserved awards for Washington Small or veteran owned in each of the 2 geographic areas. And that is described on page 4. Let's see. People always ask me, how do I submit this thing? What's the method of proposal submission? Do I submit it in Webs? No, Webs is not a portal where you submit anything. It's just a notification system. You are actually going to email your proposal, and there's instructions on that on page 10. Another thing you want to pull out right away when you're reading the solicitation is how are they going to evaluate you? And this is where I already mentioned they pulled out the non-cost factors. So it's really price that is the main factor for award. And this is also described on page 10. Okay. Anyway, one last thing that I'll pull out here is what are the contract terms? So what type of contract is this? And this is important. Is it firm and fixed? Is it is it hourly rate? Like how are they gonna get paid? How are you gonna get paid on this? How does it work? So your pricing for this particular contract is described in the Exhibit D, the contract, on page 4. On page 4, the economic price adjustment clauses are in there, and read those, understand those, and help you kind of assess the risk. I've seen some clauses that are really not friendly to small businesses, like your fee, your hourly fee or whatever it is firm and fixed for the life of the contract, which is like 6 years or whatever. It's like, that's risky. That means you got a price for the next 6 years right now with all the volatility in the marketplace. Like, are you kidding me? DES isn't that bad. It's firm and fixed for at least a year, but read that term and see for yourself. It does seem like whatever margin you put on there is firm and fixed indefinitely. So I haven't really dove too far into the Exhibit C where the pricing is to really fully understand the implications of that, but I encourage you to do that due diligence. So once you've kind of pulled out the important information, you need to make a decision whether or not you want to bid. You might want to base it on your company's goals, on what you're good at, and your likelihood of success. And this analysis doesn't have to be super fancy, but we do recommend that you do the analysis. Businesses don't have the time, the luxury to go after stuff that you can't win. And so just creating space to think about why you want this work and how you'll bid could be a really important step. So you have in your email a bid, no bid assessment tool that again is fully customizable. We gave you the Excel file so that you can make it your own. And we recommend that you customize these questions based on your company's culture, goals, and all of that. But the two core questions, the first one is, can we bid? So can we meet the technical requirements? And you score yourself 5-1. And if you have multiple people in your company, maybe the owner scores you, the business development person scores you, and then the actual technician scores you, right? So then you have 3 different scores you can average out. Can you meet the schedule requirements? And on and on and on. So you can kind of make these relevant to your business, and maybe you don't need this many of them, but the idea is that you kind of look at it from all angles and you get different people's input and you come up with a total. And if you're scoring, if your total is averaging in the 1, 2, 3 range, you got to think about whether or not you want to mitigate that somehow, maybe a teaming partner, or maybe you're just the sub to a prime at that point, but you come up with the solution to mitigate that. But if you're all 5s down the line, you're like, yeah, we can bid, we can do this, then that's wonderful. The next question is, do we want to bid? So is this program core to our business? Is there additional work after this program? Program is kind of a big term I'm using, but really this is a statewide master contract. It goes for a number of years. And so if you don't get on this, it could be that state agencies can't buy from you. They're required to use the contract vendors. So is there additional work? Probably. You saw all 4 vendors getting significant work from the program. Can you be profitable? It's a good question. Are there any terms and conditions that are an absolute no-go for you? So you want to make sure that you look at those, including the insurance requirements in Exhibit D. We've seen some really creative insurance requirements lately that have kicked out small businesses from competing. So, and if that's the case, you want to communicate that to DES and make sure that they know what the barriers are. Maybe they can do something about it. All right, so you've asked yourself, can we bid? Do we want to bid? And you've kind of done this analytical assessment without a whole lot of emotion behind it. And if you decide to go ahead and bid, now you need to organize your approach. So we're back to kind of our workflow here. Read the documents, you've decided to bid, and now you're organizing your approach. And that could include setting up a time to meet with your Apex advisor. We're here for you at no cost. And then you got to kind of compile your proposal and submit before the deadline. So a couple of tips before we turn it over for questions is to ask questions of DES, of the contracting officer, now. Identify any barriers to your participation now, because if you wait until after the award is let, your ability to protest or complain or have anything change is really limited. You also want to ask for a debrief regardless of whether or not you win. So the minute that a parent successful bidder notification goes out to you, you have 3 days to request a debrief. We highly recommend that you do that. It helps you understand how to prepare better for the next go around. If you don't win, if you're out, don't be too sad. Let's pivot your strategy a little bit. Meet with your advisor. We can talk about whether or not the successful contractors need subs. We can target the agencies with you that aren't mandated to use the statewide contracts, right? They're just optional at that point. The 4th tip, save all documents with the date you received them. All archived documents you have right now should be voided. So this is especially important if you already bid this thing. If you already bid this thing, living on your computer somewhere is probably a file for the request for information from like a year ago. The original solicitation from like May, and then the new solicitation. You want to get rid of the old ones because if you submit with those, you're going to be deemed non-responsive. And that happened last year with a paint related solicitation. It was such a bummer. So many of the firms used old templates and whatnot from a previous failed attempt. It was such a mess. So just make sure you're labeling all of your documents correctly with the date that you downloaded them and that you're all up to date on all of that. And then the fifth tip, just double check that your web's profile is correct, that you're considered a small business in webs, and that if you're eligible for the veteran-owned certification, you have time. There's like a one person at Department of Veteran Affairs that certifies veteran-owned businesses. She's very quick, and she can turn that around for you so you can be listed as a veteran-owned. So, my name's Tiffany. Trina says hi. She wishes she could be here today, but she's sitting in her dark, cold house, waiting for the power to come back on. And that's our email where you can get a hold of us. And right now, let's turn it over to questions. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you. And I want to welcome the folks that joined partway through my brief here.